It's us versus them. It's us versus the insiders and the billionaires. It's us versus Cuomo. It's us versus Zorhan.
What candidate has the plan to save the city, and what candidate can get it done, not just talk about it? My main opponent has no new ideas. He has no new plan. It's Bill de Blasio rehash, and we know how that turned out.
While there are 3 candidates on this stage, you will hear only 2 messages. My opponents, who spend more time trying to convince the other to drop out than actually proposing their own policies, will speak only of the past, because that's all that they know. I am the sole candidate running with a vision for the future of this city.
Welcome to New York One's Off Topic on Politics. I'm New York One's investigative reporter, Courtney Gross, and this is our special post-debate edition of Off Topic on Politics. We are here. It is shortly after 10 o'clock at night. We just watched and we're on television for a couple of hours because we hosted our final debate in this mayor's race, and we are here to break it all down. Our Bobby Kuza is here.
Hi, Courtney. I'm tired.
Yeah, we're still doing the hi Courtney thing. Our Ayanna Harry is here.
Now I don't know what to say. Can I say hi, Courtney?
Yeah.
Okay, hi, Courtney.
Okay.
I don't have anything pithy to say. I
think we're all a little tired.
We've all been fried. We've been analyzing this debate for a long time, and now we're going to do it some more.
We're going to do some more because it was on television. Now we're going to do it for the podcast. We got to do it for the YouTube people. We got to do it for everybody here. So
who won?
I'm supposed to ask questions. You've been asking questions on television all night. I know what I think. So you've been anchoring all night in our post-debate analysis. So I want to know what you think, because I've been talking about what I think all night.
I thought that Andrew Cuomo had a really strong debate, and he made all the same arguments that he always makes. It's not like as if he discovered some new attack line, but I just felt like he was more confident and kind of sure-footed, and Mamdani just had some bad moments. Like I thought, I mean, the one obviously bad moment was when he was asked about the ballot questions regarding housing and had no answer. I mean, not only did he not take a position, but when Errol first asked him the question, he just completely avoided the question and gave some answer that gave no indication of whether he was for it or against it. And then when Errol followed up, it was clear he wasn't taking a position, and then all of a sudden everybody ganged up on him. So he had Cuomo,
including the
audience, and it was almost like it felt like he was getting heckled by people. And then there was another time where I thought he had a bad moment when Cuomo went after him on this idea of anti-Semitism and, him stoking the fires of anti-Semitism, which he does all the time. But then Sliwa came at him on the same issue, and it just felt like there was these moments where he was under sustained attack and it was kind of unchallenged, and it just really felt like it put him back on his heels. And, he came back at Cuomo in the way that he often does, saying, Cuomo has the experience, but look at where it got us, right? And so there was some, there's some back and forth exchanges where I thought Mamdani landed some punches. But all in all, I thought Cuomo did well. I don't know if it's enough to bridge the gap that he's facing in the polls, but I think it went about as well as it could have gone for him.
Yeah, I agree. I would say Andrew Cuomo probably gained the most from the debate, and I thought Curtis Sliwa did really well. Last week, there were a few moments where Curtis Sliwa seemed off his game. He didn't quite seem to understand the questions. He was answering a question that was meant for Andrew Cuomo, and so it was almost a little bit like, is Curtis Sliwa confused? Is this not the right forum for him? But a very different, and I actually asked Curtis about that afterwards, and he said he just couldn't hear the moderators, that he was having a hard time hearing. But tonight I thought Andrew Cuomo looked confident. He looked comfortable. He seemed to be back in his zone. It was like Andrew Cuomo, the governor, kind of that vibe again. And I don't know if Zohran Mamdani, he's been pretty busy recently. It seemed like perhaps He could have benefited maybe from a little bit more rest or a little bit more time to prepare for the debate, but it didn't seem like he looked he usually comes off as very smooth and confident and in command in a format like this, and I just didn't get that from Zohran Mamdani tonight.
This is also a visual medium. It's television, right? And obviously one of our partners is WNYC, so there's plenty of people who were just listening to the thing, but obviously we're New York One, so we were watching it, and I think that the command that Andrew Cuomo had of the stage, like you said, it was like the Andrew Cuomo of his governor years. I mean, we were even saying he kind of looked like he looked good. Like he looked like he almost was younger. For some, I know that's impossible, but like it almost looked like that when he walked out there on the stage. And meanwhile, Mamdani he just didn't look that great. I don't know if he just wasn't wearing enough makeup or if he was like, it was too hot in the room. I know this is not the best outtake, but I feel like that kind of visual stuff really matters when it comes to the final moments of this mayoral campaign.
Yeah, one person looks cool, calm, and collected, and another person looks like they're literally under fire.
Yeah.
I thought Cuomo, as he often does, his arguments are a little slippery, right? Like he accuses. I mean, he attacks Mamdani, and he's of course been doing this throughout the campaign, and he's kind of ramped it up in the last couple of months, where he attacks him as, an extremist. He brings up decriminalizing prostitution and how he wants to get rid of all doesn't want to prosecute misdemeanors,
Which isn't true.
Which is not true. And Mamdani,
well, the decriminalized prostitution thing actually is true. He did sponsor some legislation.
Yes, but Cuomo goes to say he wants to legalize prostitution and also let everybody in Rikers Island just go free in 2027.
Right. He said he doesn't want to prosecute misdemeanors. He says he's going to empty the jails, and those things aren't true. And Mamdani did refute them, but later. And it was like, I just felt like he just was sort of unchallenged when he would attack Mamdani. But, again, some of the things that Cuomo says are laughable, like the idea that Mamdani is going to empty Rikers Island. And then Cuomo made this argument that he can't freeze the rent because he doesn't have any control over the Rent Guidelines Board, because it's only the Rent Guidelines Board itself that sets the policy, which is like technically literally true. But of course, the mayor appoints the members. So the mayor does effectively have control. And then there's this one point where they're talking about building housing, and the vacancy rate in the city is like incredibly low. It's like 1.4%. Which is the reason nobody can find an apartment, and the rents are so high. And Cuomo said, when I left office, the vacancy rate was 4.5% or something. That's because of COVID, and everybody was like fleeing the city.
Yeah.
So he makes these points that I think are misleading, to say the least. But a lot of them either went unchallenged, or he just was able to. Like the spot where he talked about Mamdani being inexperienced, he went on. It went on and on and on, and it was like 30 seconds where he just like got to hammer at him, and it felt like Mamdani was just on the ropes the whole time.
And that moment, it's funny because I just wrote down inexperience as the next topic that I wanted to talk about, because thinking about the housing question and how Mamdani refused to answer these ballot questions that are going to be on your ballot. So voters, when you go to vote, early voting starts on Saturday. So when you go to vote, you can flip over your ballot and you're going to have a number of questions about housing in New York City. And these are ballot questions about producing more housing. And they're going to basically, in a nutshell, and we'll talk about them more next week, they will empower the mayor to veto some of the council's decisions on housing developments. And the city council is very much against this because they says it's taking away their power. The Mayor Eric Adams, is very much for it. And it's this big debate in city government, and Mamdani didn't answer the question. And it made him, I think what it showed, his vulnerability of inexperience, that he doesn't want to go out there or know about the issue. That's my takeaway. It could also be he's trying to play both sides.
I think he's trying to play both sides. And I think that it's going to get him in a little bit of trouble, right? So he knows that these ballot proposals are very, very controversial, particularly amongst the city council, the council that he theoretically in a few months might need to rely on to get a lot of his agenda passed. So it seems like he doesn't want to upset them. I don't know. I feel like right now Zohran Mamdani is in a let me do what I can to please as many people as I can moment. And I think, yes, you do makes some people happy, but then people then wonder like, well, who are you and where do you really stand? And that to me is most seen in him saying today that he wants to keep Jessica Tisch on as police commissioner. It's like, wait, what? Like you guys seem like you are on the complete opposite when it comes to policing, when it comes to raise the age, when it comes to discovery reform, bail reform, the strategic response group. Like, it seems like you two could not be more different, but now you're saying this is the person that you want to be your police commissioner. So do you really believe in Jessica Tisch and her leadership style? Or are you trying to signal to people that you will hire seasoned professionals to help you lead the city? And so it's kind of, again, to me, it just all raises this question of like, well, where do you really stand? And do you really believe what you really believe? Or are you saying what you think you need to say in order to get elected?
But the Tisch thing is also him responding to the inexperience question, right? I think that he's picking her because people see him as a 34-year-old kid. He just turned 34 over the weekend. And perhaps if he's responding to inexperienced thing and responding to
but she's not the only experienced person and when it comes to policing in the United States of America. And like, you can't find anyone else with experience that's more aligned with what you've said. And I mean, he's been very, very vocal in his views in the NYPD. And so has Commissioner Tisch, right? Like, she's been very much calling for a rollback to many of the criminal justice reforms that were passed in 2019. Zohran Mamdani is like, we need to stand by them and believe in them. So I do think that this is another area where he will alienate his base. Will they now vote for Andrew Cuomo? Probably not. They'll probably still vote for him. But I do think it does raise the question for many people, like, are you just trying to please as many people as possible to get in? And then when you get in, then where will you stand and how will you actually lead?
And it all might be for naught, by the way, because Jessica Tisch is by no means guaranteed to say yes.
Correct. Yeah.
And accept the position and stay on. I mean, I have a hard time seeing why she might even agree to do that at all, right? Given the fact that they are so not aligned. But it's tricky with the police commissioner because you are, in command of this police force. And I think that police officers are skeptical of Mamdani at best, right? I mean, because of the rhetoric that we've seen in the past, right? Which Andrew Cuomo constantly brings up, where, he said that police were wicked and corrupt and talked about disbanding and defunding the police department. So I think in order to maintain, to have some level of support from police officers. And this is the same thing we saw with Bill de Blasio, right? You need to bring someone in who has some, commands some respect from the rank and file. And maybe Jessica Tisch is that person. And, he sort of justifies it by pointing to the fact that she went in and rooted out corruption and the fact that she's presided over a drop in crime. So that seems to be the way that he's justifying it to those maybe on the left who might be skeptical of her.
It was so strategically planted too. I mean, it was in the New York Times, obviously fed to the New York Times to land 2 hours before our debate started, to make sure, of course, he was going to be asked about it on the debate stage, which will be the largest platform venue that he and all the other candidates on the stage will have prior to early voting starting on Saturday, and really prior to Election Day, honestly, because they'll be out on the campaign trail every day, but this is the moment where you're going to get, I don't know, at least hundreds of thousands of people watching this debate and going to see what your policy positions are.
Yeah, and it's tricky also because you want to send that signal about the people that you're appointing, but not doing it in a way that's so presumptuous that you are going to be elected. So do you do it before the election? Do you do it before the debate? Do you wait? And so I think that was the tactical move today, was to kind of let it leak out just before the debate and let it come up seemingly sort of organically. Yeah.
So one of the things we were watching for ahead of this debate is what was going to happen between Cuomo and Curtis Sliwa. Curtis Sliwa being the Republican candidate. They have been at odds over the last couple of days, fighting over dropping out. Cuomo calling him, what is he calling him now?
Spoiler.
A spoiler in the press releases, or he's been calling him that for a while, but it's just heightened. It's like got way more volume to it over the last couple of days. Curtis Sliwa was on a radio show this morning at his former home, WABC, and he kind of went off the rails saying he's never going to be at WABC again. Everyone's trying to convince him to drop out. And the two of them on the debate stage tonight, Curtis Sliwa and Andrew Cuomo, still clashed. I mean, the war between those two isn't over. They're still trying to tackle or to hit the other candidate to try to get some of their votes.
Yeah, and I think that probably blunted some of Cuomo's effectiveness tonight, because Cuomo was effective, I think, in going after Mamdani, but then that's offset by Sliwa continuing to attack him. And, as happens pretty much every time he gets on stage or he, comes under questioning by the press or anybody else, the issue of sexual harassment was raised, and the issue of his handling of COVID. Actually, COVID didn't come up nearly as much tonight. Yeah. But he had to answer for the sexual harassment allegations again.
Twice.
And gave his stock answer. But Sliwa is reminding people about that. So, it's very hard for Cuomo to break through with Sliwa. I mean, A, attacking him, and B, refusing to get out of the race and, taking away that 15, 20%, whatever it is that Curtis Lee was going to end up with. That's going to be a big chunk of the electorate that isn't going to Andrew Cuomo.
But I did think it was wiser for Cuomo this time around to attack both Sliwa and Mamdani, because at the last debate, Cuomo kept going after Mamdani. And I think we had this conversation last week. I didn't understand it because I'm like, you're probably more likely to pick up Sliwa voters than you are to pick up Mamdani voters. So why not criticize Sliwa and make his supporters question him? So I do think that Andrew Cuomo was more balanced, and it was kind of a free-for-all. Everybody all went after each other. And I think ultimately Cuomo did shine a little bit more than the other candidates. But yeah, there were still the tough moments. And he's always going to face these questions about the sexual harassment charges that led to his resignation. I think the question is, though, do voters care? What percentage of voters care? Because they know. They know, they've heard this. We are in a post-Me Too moment. And so I do think that that is a question of is this a deal breaker for New York City voters? And you hear so often when voters talk about Andrew Cuomo, they're like, I don't agree with him all the time. I think it's even in one of his ads, right? That's the start of the ad. I don't always agree with Andrew Cuomo, but I know he gets things done. I'm pretty sure that's literally one of the ads. So I do think that, yes, it is obviously a huge weakness for Andrew Cuomo, but I think New Yorkers are, particularly after the raid we saw on Canal Street, they're thinking about leadership, they're thinking about experience, and they're thinking, who do I trust to be the protector for this city in this moment? I mean, what happened on Canal Street could just be a precursor. I mean, we've seen what's played out in Chicago, we've seen what's played out in Los Angeles, and I think New Yorkers are starting to get worried that that's gonna play out here, and folks are like, Trump is already going after Mamdani, and he's not even elected yet. We don't even know if he's going to win. And I do think that that's part of what's playing into the minds of New Yorkers as they make up their they have to settle on a final decision.
Did you mean that Cuomo went after Sliwa? Were you thinking of that spot where he talked about the guardian angels and how he hadn't, what was the issue? Something about the guardian angels not having taxes exempt status.
Oh, the charity issue.
Yeah.
That somehow he didn't somehow register as a charity and was accepting donations.
That was the one time where Cuomo went after Sliwa. And then there was another comment. Did you catch that moment when they were talking about the psychiatric beds that Cuomo had gotten rid of when he was governor? And Cuomo said, I'm going to save one for you.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
To Curtis Sliwa. Did you catch that?
I thought I couldn't. It was a lot of cross chatter, but that's kind of what
he said. That, and it almost didn't get caught on the mic.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of a low blow.
That's a really below the belt kind of thing to say. That's that's interesting.
Yeah, but Cuomo definitely engaged with Curtis. And last week it was almost like a two-person debate at some points. Yeah, Curtis was definitely part of the conversation more so.
Curtis is right there because Cuomo did reduce the number of psychiatric beds dramatically under his administration in exchange for supportive housing and outpatient beds, which we've talked about on the podcast quite a bit. So other big takeaways. I mean, Mamdani to me not only didn't answer a question about the housing proposals, but he also wasn't quite concrete about mayoral control. there were other issues, I think, related to small business.
I didn't think his answer on Rikers was robust enough. That's just me. Okay, so you
will follow
want to stand on right. The law obviously cannot be followed the way it is, and I just haven't heard it's like the start of a sentence and there's a comma and I'm like waiting for the rest. Okay, so how will you lead the city through this moment? We have a law, a legal mandate, can't meet it, too expensive, all these jails are behind budget, the Rikers population is larger. There are some real big unanswered questions here, and I have yet to hear him begin to even try and answer those questions. And that's a big deal.
Yeah.
You don't have no type of concrete plan for Rikers?
Yeah. And Cuomo, Cuomo was criticized initially when he basically reversed himself and said, well, we are going to keep Rikers open. You're just going to rebuild the facilities. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the initial reaction to that was, well, you completely changed your position. But then Cuomo has somehow managed to turn it around on Mamdani and say, well, you don't have a position. And again, he then takes it a step further and makes it sound as though Mamdani is just going to open up, is just going to close the jail and let the detainees out on the street, which is clearly not what's going to happen. But Mamdani also just doesn't seem to have a plan for what the alternative is to the current law. And something's going to have to be negotiated with the city council, right? And it may not be, it may not be clear what that's going to look like, but it almost makes Mamdani look weak by not having a plan.
And that could be your answer. I look forward to on day one diving in and getting into some deep conversations with the city council so that we can come up with, the right legislative fix. Just say something, anything, so that we can feel okay, we know which direction he's going in. But Rikers just seems like such a big issue. And you're a member of the DSA. This has been a very progressive, important issue for the DSA and for the progressive movement in New York City. And so the fact that I think again begs the question, so do you really not have a policy, or do you have a policy but you just don't want to tell people because you are afraid that they're not going to like what you have to say?
And there's a through line. It's not just the Rikers issue. The mayoral control issue, I know I keep bringing up, stuck out to me, as well as the $30 minimum wage. That was the other one that really stuck out, is where he's saying he wants to raise the minimum wage in New York City to $30 by 2030. It's currently set to go up to $17 in January. That is a huge jump. Is that for everyone? For small businesses, for bodega owners? Are you going to be paying those hourly wages to workers there? And how are small businesses going to afford that? And what he said that New York City needs this because of the affordability crisis. And sure, that can be true, but it's both and. Where's the solution? I get I should say the solution is the $30 minimum wage, but where's the path to get there, I guess?
Yeah, and his strength, Mamdani's strength, has been, obviously it's been the affordability issue, right? And he's been so effective throughout the campaign at taking almost every question and somehow turning it and making it about affordability and cost of living. And that has obviously resonated with people. And I almost felt like tonight, again, that message got lost a little bit. And he wasn't able to drive that point home as consistently as he has at other debates and in other forums.
And perhaps this is a function of having as long of a campaign season as we've had, right? You typically, June, after the primary comes, it's over, right?
Yeah.
June primary, we know who the Democratic nominee is. There's a general election, but Democrats probably going to win. So, Mamdani has had to take these repeated questions on his platform all throughout the primary, now again leading up through the general election. It's been months and months and months and months. And so, I do think some of the cracks are beginning to show. And I think some of the initial excitement amongst New Yorkers is still there, but there's also okay, but also, what else? And so this is the real challenge for Mamdani, I think, in this moment.
And I was just thinking about Rikers. I think Mamdani has a line where he blames Eric Adams, right? He says it's Mayor Adams that hasn't done anything to make progress towards the goal. And at a certain point, it's that may be true.
Right.
But at a certain point, it's here we are. You're on the precipice of being in charge. Mm-hmm. And it almost doesn't matter what Eric Adams did. You now are the one who's going to have to come up with a plan. And I think that goes for his criticism of Andrew Cuomo as well. I mean, at a certain point, you can blame Mayor Adams, you can blame Andrew Cuomo, you can try to tie Andrew Cuomo to Trump, but now this is going to be in your hands if he wins, right? Which is still not a totally foregone conclusion. And so it feels like we're in a different phase now.
Speaking of Eric Adams, where did Andrew Cuomo go immediately after stepping off that debate stage, but to the Garden and sitting courtside with Eric Adams? And he is the only person that raised his hand to be like, I'll accept Eric Adams's endorsement. So that leads me to the last question and final thoughts about, does the debate change anything? Andrew Cuomo may have had a good night, but the math still doesn't really work out.
Was that a Mayor Adams endorsement? I don't even think we're really clear on what happened.
They just are watching basketball.
Right, but I think that might be as close to an endorsement as we're going to get, right? I don't think Mayor Adams is going to come out.
Well, I also, what is the Eric Adams endorsement going to do for him as of this point? He already has those voters. If you believe the polls, all of those voters did go to Andrew Cuomo anyway, so... And there's 10% of them. I guess for him, every 10% counts.
Yes.
And this goes back to my question. The final question is, he could have had a good night, but it's a little bit too little, too late, kind of, right? Mamdani is, if 47%, he has the plurality of voters as of this point, with Curtis and Cuomo dividing the.
And what are the undecideds? There's not that many.
3%.
And we've seen it again and again in these polls. Mamdani voters are enthusiastic.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So people are going to turn out.
And they're probably undercounted in.
They may be undercounted because they're younger, and the turnout he drove among young people in the primary was incredible. And if all those people come back out in November, that's going to go a long ways towards getting elected.
I think if the Andrew Cuomo we saw on the debate stage tonight had showed up during the primary, it could have been a different outcome.
Yeah, a different set of voters may have come out.
Yeah.
But they didn't. Okay, we're going to go home and go to bed and rest up and get ready for the final days of the campaign trail. So that's going to do it for this week's episode. You can always watch us on Inside City Hall weeknights at 7 o'clock. If you like what you're hearing, leave us a review. You can send us an email at yourstorynewyork1@charter.com. Thanks to our producer, Anthony Roman. As always, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week.